Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Daniel, and I work with Second Start of the Right Bookstore, and I am joined here today by two amazing authors who, at the time of this recording, just yesterday, had two amazing books get published. We have Veera Hiranandani with How to Find What You're Not Looking For, and Saadia Faruqi with Yusuf Azeem is Not a Hero. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hi. How are you all? So I'm going to ask you just real quick to tell us a little bit about yourselves. Tell us what you're all about. What are these amazing books that I've just mentioned? A little bit, what are they about? So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
I'm going to yield the floor to you, Saadia. You can start us off.
Sure. So I'm Saadia Faruqi. This is my latest middle grade novel, Yusuf Azeem is Not a Hero, but you might know me as the author of the Yasmin books because they seem to be very popular in little kids' lives. And so I write those. I live in Houston, Texas. And I guess I'm just, excited to be here and talk about this book in particular. So Yusuf Azeem is Not a Hero is it's a story that's fiction, but also has a really good basis in reality. It's about a 12-year-old boy named, obviously, Yusuf Azeem, whose small Texas town called Frey is getting ready to commemorate the 20th anniversary of 9/11 with a whole lot of noise and patriotic speeches and parades and things like that. And organizers are a white nationalist group called the Patriot Boys. And at the same time, Yusuf's Muslim community is trying to build a mosque in the town, which is also being blocked by very same Patriot Boys. Some of the bullying that's happening in the streets also kind of spills over into his school. So Yusuf has to deal with all of this, plus try to win a regional robotics competition that he's really excited, or he was excited about before all this started happening. And he tries to kind of gain strength and understanding for his own struggles by reading his uncle's 20-year-old journal, which describes the attacks of 9/11 and its repercussions, especially to the Muslim American community that he's a part of. So this is a story of real people doing real things, but also a made-up story for me.
It's great, and I'm seeing all the connections we can make. My story is also kind of connected to real people, but also fictionalized on top of that. And so I have two covers. So this is the hardcover, How to Find What You're Not Looking For. And then the paperback that just came out for both of us. My paperback cover is really different, which is exciting. And so this is the paperback cover, and it's got these, fun, swirly kind of 60s looking colors on it. And it takes place in 1967. And the main character, Ariel Goldberg, is a 11-year-old Jewish girl growing up in Connecticut. And her family runs a Jewish bakery. There's not a huge Jewish community where she's growing up. And her older sister falls in love with an Indian college student. And this is right after the Loving versus Virginia ruling, the Supreme Court Loving versus Virginia ruling that banned all laws against interracial marriage at that time. And so when Ariel's sister Leah and her fiance Raj want to get married, they're sort of inspired by the recent Supreme Court ruling, but Ariel's parents, Jewish parents, wanted Leah, Ariel's older sister, to marry somebody who's Jewish, and Raj, his family, wanted him to marry somebody who is Indian and Hindu. So Ariel is sort of observing how that changes the dynamics in her family, and she has to decide how she feels about her own identity and how it's kind of affecting herself and connects her to the larger world of things that are going on in the country at that time. And it's inspired by my own parents' marriage. They got married in 1968 in Connecticut. My mother is Jewish and my father is originally from India.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for those incredible intros into what your stories are about. I love how they're very important as realistic novels or realistic fiction novels, but also very important as historical fiction novels, just with dealing with those separate, extremely important events. And Veera, you actually incredibly led right into our next question here. How much of each of your books is based on your own life experiences? So Veera, let's start with you for this one.
Sure. So, as I said, my parents got married in 1968. And as we often do, sometimes when we're younger, we don't really think about kind of what our parents went through to sort of get us, if they have kids, like when you're looking back at what they went through, you don't really understand, sort of what they might have been up against in whatever way they, we all have obstacles. So whatever obstacles that they had to start their lives and start a family. And so I was thinking about the loving ruling, and I was talking with my editor, and I just started thinking more about, how much that affected my parents and their thinking and their thought process in 1968 in Connecticut, where it was always had been legal for people of two races to get married. But thinking about, what they went through, and their families weren't supportive when they wanted to get married, and they did anyway. And now they're, celebrating their 53rd wedding anniversary. And so I just wanted to kind of backtrack and explore what that meant to them, and then create a fictional story. I didn't want to tell exactly their story, but I wanted to tell a story based on some of the things they went through, and kind of explore the identities and the experiences that a lot of people went through and continue to go through in different ways.
Amazing. Yeah, most definitely. Thank you, Veera. And Saadia, how about you? How does Yusuf's story, as it were, how does his story relate to your own life experiences?
I grew up in Pakistan. I didn't come to the US until I was 22 years old. So my experiences have been very different from any of the ones that I write about oftentimes, if I'm writing about kids growing up in the US. So for me, it's been mostly my children's experiences growing up as first generation American kids, not only just living here, but also watching and often experiencing some kind of prejudice or bullying happen in their schools and their neighborhoods, whether it's towards themselves, especially my son, who kind of personality wise, I a little bit modeled Yusuf after as well. Just around them in the news, hearing things going on. But mostly I tried to showcase the collective experiences of the Muslim American community. This book is really important to me, and it was almost a huge burden not in a negative way, if you can understand that, but in a positive way of showing how my entire community has been treated or viewed the last 20 years. So I guess that for me, it was more collective experiences. I interviewed about 20 or so people for journal entries that are in this book. My criteria for interviewing was you had to be Muslim, you had to be either in 6th or 7th grade when 9/11 happened, and you'd be just amazed at those responses. It was almost therapeutic for a lot of people who are now adults to be giving kind of just like telling their stories about what they witnessed and how they lived their lives and how they grew up in a post 9/11 world. So I included all of those kind of thoughts and emotions and things that some of those people went through in those journal entries. I wanted to really stay true to those experiences overall, rather than one single person. Then the stories in the current part of the book that's used, the story that's Yusuf's story and his town story, zoning meetings that happen every single day in cities across America, where construction of mosques and other religious buildings are being blocked, and so I included a lot of those stories, real life stories as well. So again, I think it wasn't the idea that I'll include my personal experiences. I never thought that would be valid or valuable in this case. it became personal for me, in fact, because I belong to this community that's being targeted and isolated for the last 20 years. And I kept thinking, how can I give voice to all of those rather than just one or mine?
Thank you both for being so willing to be open and sharing that. I definitely think it makes sense. Your stories are come across so authentically, and I think that's really clear where that comes from. So yeah, I appreciate that. And spinning off of that, I think for both Ariel and for Yusuf, identity plays a role, whether their own view of identity or other people's view of identity onto them. And specifically when it comes to as we've talked about, their cultural and religious backgrounds. So Veera, let's hop back to you. How does identity play a role in Ariel's story? For Ariel, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers for Ariel. And you know, everybody identifies in many different ways, right? Because there's your racial identity and your religious identity and maybe your gender identity and your sexual identity. And then just, you know, we're defined by what we're interested in and all the communities that we're a part of. And so Ariel is, because this kind of opens up her world, she's starting to think of herself as having more clear identities, you know, because she's seeing, okay, I'm part of this Jewish family and I'm experiencing anti-Semitism in school, but my parents are showing a certain kind of prejudice towards Raj, Leah's fiance, because he's not Jewish and because he's an immigrant and because he's brown. And what does that mean for me as somebody who's experiencing this prejudice because I'm Jewish, but also I walk around as a white person in this world, and that's different than what Raj is experiencing and a lot of people are experiencing. So she's never really unpacked a lot of this. And another challenge that she has is that she is discovering she has something called dysgraphia, a learning disability that affects your handwriting and also your writing planning. And that's something that hasn't been well identified because she's growing up in 1967. So, you know, teachers and people around her don't really have the tools or the research to fully label and understand what's going on with her. But she works with a teacher who is kind of experimenting a little bit, you know, sort of reading some early research and sort of figuring out what might help Ariel. So she encourages her to type, and Ariel starts writing these very small, simple poems in a way, and she's able to express herself in a way that she never has, between allowing herself to write small and to write in kind of these short bits, and then also the typing, so she doesn't have to work so hard forming the letters. So that's, you know, Ariel is really just understanding who she is on so many levels for the first time. And that's very much what the story is about.
I love that. And I'm sure that's where a lot of your readers are too, just whether in middle school or a little younger or a little older. That's such a big problem that they struggle with, that the students struggle with. And, you know, kind of leading off of that too is whether it's your own identity or whether it's how people perceive you and perceive your identity. That's something that Yusuf has to struggle through quite a bit. So Saadia, how does other people's perception of Yusuf and who Yusuf is, how does that shape him and your story?
Yeah, like Veera said, you know, we all have so many different identities that make up who we are, and Yusuf is no different. I mean, let's see, it's first generation American. That's a big identity for kids who are growing up here, who have parents from other countries. You know, it may not sound like a big deal to others, but for them, that's a very big part of who they are and how they are formed and how their personalities develop. Then the Pakistani heritage or the South Asian heritage. The culture, the things you eat, language you speak at home, not being able to communicate as well with people of the elder generation, the religious identity he has, which is being Muslim. And like some of my other characters in some of my other books, Yusuf is he's strong in that identity, especially his cultural and religious identity. He's okay with it. He's not trying to run away from it like some of his friends are. So you see that When you see the friend group that he has, they're kind of, back and forth within who's more religious or okay with being religious versus who's not. So he's comfortable in his identity, and he's got some friends who are as well. And at the same time, he sees how others perceive that. He's really upset and saddened by how some people in his town, especially, small Texas town, conservative, everyone's going to church and football on Fridays. And that's, he's saddened by how not only he's treated, but more his parents and other people who he's really protective of in his community, how they're treated. And he just can't understand why this is. And he's kind of the kid who's wanting to, um, get in someone's face and say, how dare you say that? What's wrong with you? But for Yusuf, rather than looking at his religion and culture as a bad thing, he tries to use it his advantage by learning from it, or at least to his advantage in the sense that what can his faith teach him in terms of how he needs to behave in the face of all this prejudice and hatred that's coming his way. There's a big element of the book that's his Sunday school. And there's a lot of scenes where his Sunday school teacher is teaching them things that a lot of the other kids are kind of moaning and groaning about, as we are. If you've ever been to Sunday school, it's not the funnest place to be for a lot of people, unless you have an amazing teacher. But he is kind of soaking up these stories of the prophets of old and people that he religiously kind of looks up to. He realizes that he can use some of these lessons, some of these stories, and in his everyday life to withstand the challenges and the obstacles that everyone seems to be putting in his path, adults and kids separately. So these people, these stories that he's learning about, they become like his mentors, his teachers, and he's seeing that as a good thing. And want my readers to kind of take that away too, not just everything else that Yusuf is kind of imparting, but also that being okay with not only your religion in terms of how you are as a person, but also how those stories that you learn in that Sunday school or from your elders, they can be a real source of comfort if you kind of open up your mind and let them.
Yeah, amazing. I love how your readers can relate to that, or even if they can't relate to it, have a window into that experience. I love how you said earlier too that you interviewed so many people that were in 7th or 8th grade around September 11th, and used that to, I'm sure, make not only Yusuf but his friend group and all these people that you mentioned talking or handling things in different ways. I love how that really just creates an opening for all kinds of readers that you might have. So that's incredible. Very cool. Awesome. So Veera, I was reading through your educator guide that you had for your novel, and I really, really loved I would almost call it like a mini project or like little research project on encouraging students and encouraging your readers to look into their family history, and particularly how US history has shaped like their family tree and their family history. So if you had a student that wanted to do that, or maybe a teacher that wanted to have their students do that, either in their personal time or at school, whatever it may be, what are some first steps that you would give them to really get started researching into that?
Yeah, well, I think that for me, I've always taken a very personal journey and kind of entry into history in general from a very personal place, because I think that when I was growing up, I would just hear, kind of the names and dates that it was decided I was supposed to pay attention to and learn about, growing up in Connecticut in the 80s, actually. And so I had that lens, and it all seemed very dry, and I wasn't great at just memorizing names and dates. And so I always say I'm kind of an accidental historian in that way. I mean, I never thought that I would be maybe like known for writing historical fiction, certainly not then. And as I wanted to explore more of my background, I looked at my parents and I looked at the timeline of kind of what they sort of where they were born. My mother was born in Brooklyn and my father was born in what is now Pakistan and in Sindh, and then came to eventually Mumbai, called was called Bombay, and then in his 20s came to the US in the 1960s. And so just looking at that timelines of sort of what your parents' experiences were they born in this country? Where were they born? And then what was going on in history at that time? And then how did it personally affect them? And then going back to then go one generation back to your grandparents, and were they born in this country, and what was going on at the time that they were young and at the time that they were young adults, and sort of following the timelines of your parents and grandparents. You know, that I think that's one possible entry point.
Yeah, amazing. I can just see that being an incredible personal or school project, is just go and talk to people who have lived that history, see what was going on, and how did it affect them. It's the
Right.
best primary source you could have, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, thank you so
And that
much for sharing.
question, how did it affect them? You know, because I think sometimes people don't realize how something historical, you know, think about what we're living through in the last few years and continue to live through, and how deeply affected we all are in so many different ways. Um, but even in times where it's not quite so dramatic, if people take a moment and think, they realize, oh yeah, when that happened, or that changed, or that technology was invented, or that law was made, I was affected, my family was affected this way.
Definitely. I mean, everything that we've gone through in the past few years, like you said, one day is just going to be dates in a textbook. And we know living through it that it's so much more than that. So I definitely think it's so valuable to be able to talk to people who have those experiences and just ask them about it. So if you have the opportunity to do that with any family or family friends, or just anyone that you may know, you know, we definitely encourage you to do that, because this is an amazing project that can really connect you to people. So thanks so much for sharing. And then, and Saadia, I was reading through your educator guide as well. Both of you have amazing educator guides as well, by the way. And for our viewers at home, we are going to get those to you so that you have the ability to access them. But Saadia, in your educator guide, as we've talked about, Yusuf and friends, he faces quite a bit of prejudice regarding the events that you know, that occurred. And you talk a lot about introducing the idea of being a community ally, and how that kind of takes place for Yusuf and in your book. So how would you, first of all, I guess, can you tell us what a community ally is? And then secondly, if a student wants to be a community ally, or not even really that, but just how can students be community allies to people in their community that need an ally?
Yeah, it's kind of a topic that I'm really passionate about, and a lot of my books have this element of it in previous years as well. This book really kind of goes above and beyond in terms of the a level of discrimination and even violence that happens, which is really hard for the average person to be an ally for. You know, it's okay if someone's asking you to say, hey, stand up when someone's saying something mean in a school hallway, but if you have to stand up to a person who's waving a gun around in your, outside in marketplace or somewhere, it's a lot harder to be an ally. So is something that's very important to me, because we all need to learn that, not just kids. Um, but an ally is different from, say, a friend or a silent partner or somebody who just stands by you. It means somebody who's willing to stand up for you, and go above and beyond just being listening to you or hearing what you have to say, but actually standing up when something negative is happening or coming towards your way. So, from in a child's perspective, I would say it means standing up against a bully, even if that bully is not targeting their hatred towards you, but it's towards someone else. Means not staying quiet and hoping that the problem will just go away, because let's face it, that's human nature. That's what we want to do, right? We see something ugly happening and we feel like if we either move away from it, especially if it's not towards us, even if it is, we just want to stay quiet because we don't want to escalate the problem. And yeah, some of it is being careful and making sure that you're not putting anyone in harm's way, and sometimes being quiet can be the way to go, but I feel like it also emboldens the other person, where they think nothing's going to happen, there's going to be no consequence. So um, oftentimes those problems escalate because you're just being quiet. So an ally is an important question for kids to learn and adults too, but obviously my focus is my reader. If you see someone being bullied, say something, do something, depending on how bad the situation is. You should either, just standing next to that person and saying, hey, that's not cool, or don't say that, it's not correct, that's a stereotype, or that's hateful, whatever's being said. But if it's worse, if it's bad that you're scared, so bad that you're scared, tell an adult. So many times, even my own kids, when they see something happening or something happens to them, they don't want to tell anyone because they just don't want to rock the boat. And I think that's very harmful in the long run. So being an ally means sometimes having to go and tell someone, hey, I saw this happening and I don't think it's right. Can you do something? In this book, and Yusuf Azeem is not a hero, Yusuf really, really lives and breathes this concept of allyship. He stands up to the main bully in his school is Ethan, who's a son of the Patriot Boys leader. And Ethan is just a horrible individual. But he stands up to Ethan time and time again, not only when he's facing him himself, but when Ethan is hurting somebody else. So you see, several situations where Ethan is targeting another person and Yusuf gets in the middle and says, don't do that. And there are times when he gets in trouble for it, but he just will not back down. Everyone keeps telling Yusuf not to be a hero. That's basically how the title came about. They think that he's going to get hurt or there's no use. But Yusuf realizes that staying silent actually perpetuates a problem. It makes this kid even bolder because no one's saying anything back to him. So I think that readers should really learn. They can learn from Yusuf, and I hope, and try to do that. Speak up when they see something, whether it's in the school hallway or if they feel not equipped, at least tell somebody else and tell an adult, and that really can make all the difference.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, we here at Second Star love to give our viewers and our readers action steps, and those are amazing action steps. Thank you, Saadia, very much. So next, they say never judge a book by its cover, but everyone does, right? I definitely do. When you're in the bookstore, you're looking at the covers, and you both have amazing book covers. I'll get you to hold them up when you talk about them as well. But Saadia, let's stick with you for a minute. Who did you work with, or how did your book cover kind of come about? I'd love to hear that story. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I love my cover mostly because it has a boy on the cover, and having a brown Muslim boy on the cover of a book for this age is kind of rare. So, and he kind of looks like my son too when he was this age. So it's personally very precious to me. Just the message that it gives, because unfortunately we've got this image or the stereotype of a boy like Yusuf being, just a negative character. And the amazing illustrator, he was really happy. His name is Azeem, and he lives in Pakistan. He was happy to see that his name was on the back of the cover this time instead of the hardcover. You have it inside. But he's an amazing artist. He lives in Pakistan, and he really, I guess, encapsulated a lot of the, there's the lockers where Yusuf keeps getting these anonymous hateful notes. There's him with his backpack, and just overall the colors and the scheme and everything is just showing how this is. There's so many layers to the story. There's the fun element of the robotics, but there's also, as you get deeper and deeper into the story, you see the nuances and the danger and the things that are really real and sometimes scary, not just for kids, but also adults around us, where things are happening that they're not in control of and they're worried about. But there's some way, as you read the book, you'll see there's a lot of things that you can do, even when you're in a situation like that, even when it feels like you can't hide from whatever's happening. I think that the cover really helps all those nuances of the stories that are happening. So I'm really happy with it. I hope
Yeah,
that people
definitely.
are too.
It is definitely a standout cover. I mean, having the book, him like kind of standing over the book, and also it's very like cosmic in the background, which was my favorite part. That drew me right in, like
Yeah.
if there's stars or I just think it looks great, and all the
Yeah, I
tones of
mean, you know,
blue.
as an author, you can't take credit. A lot of times they'll ask you, you know, what would you like to see? And sometimes my editors will ask for like inspiration covers where I can give, you know, links to covers that have already been published, of books that have been published where I really like this or I really like this. But the end of the day, it's the designer. So it's David Curtis at Harper who's the designer of this, and then Hazem, they came up with it. And I didn't have to do anything. I mean, you know, at the most, I kind of comment often about skin tones and things like that. And otherwise, I think that it was just, I really thought that it fit the story.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, if we have any aspiring writers or illustrators or editors or anybody in that realm, that's some amazing insight right there. Thank you. All right. And then, and Veera, with your book, you had, I remember in having it in the store, your amazing hardcover, and you've also switched, the paperback has a different cover, which also looks really cool. So I'd love to hear, you know, the same thing. What does your cover say about your book? And I'd also love to hear what's the, you know, what made you have the decision to change the cover between the two editions?
Yes. Well, like Saadia said, and Saadia, I love your cover. It's so bold and really draws your eye to it. But I also can't take credit for, you know, it's just more that I get sent the ideas. Maybe I give a few suggestions. But it's really ultimately up to the designers and my editor and publisher and all of that. So they decided to just do something fun and do a different twist on the cover. So this was the hardcover, and you know, I loved how many all the different elements that it had, where you know Ariel was writing, and it kind of has this blackout poetry that was more just kind of the idea of choosing words and writing poetry. She doesn't really write blackout poetry in the book. She writes poetry, but not like that. So it's just more suggestive. And then there's like a picture of right, that's Leah and Ariel, and then there's like Raj down here, and then there's the Lovings over here, and then there's like a record because they listen to records, and the typewriter that Ariel uses, and that was really fun. And it kind of has this sort of 60s font. And the cover, well, the designer is Kelly Brady, who did both covers at Kokila and Penguin Young Readers. And then the artist is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, Eleni Kalartaki, and I'm probably saying that wrong, so I apologize, but that she was the artist for this cover. And then this cover, I think, you know, they wanted to give it more of a 60s spin, and then it's just cool that the typewriter is sort of front and center, and the way that Ariel would be writing the poetry. So it's just like a little more simple, but also maybe a little groovier. And then some of the awards that the book has won, which I just can't even believe, but they're on there too. So and the cover artist is Andrew Banneker, and it's also designed by Kelly Brady. So shout out to them for all their great work.
Definitely. And shout out to you and the artists and everyone for having to make some room for some awards on the paperback. That's always a great problem to have, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely groovy is the first word that comes to mind for those for me. And like I said, both of you, amazing covers. In the bookstore, my eyes were drawn to them right away. So thanks for indulging me on that one. I had to ask about those. So another question that as we kind of get close to wrapping up here, that students and our viewers always want to know is, other than writing, how else do you like to spend your time? What else do you like to do? Veera, let's start with you.
Sure. When I have the time, I really enjoy cooking. I don't enjoy cooking when I don't have the time, but I truly love it when I do, and just like entertaining and stuff. But sometimes it's just few and far between these days, but I do enjoy it when I can. I have a cat. I'm very cat obsessed. My cat Molly, she's my pal. And so, you know, I enjoy spending time with my cat along with the rest of my family. And Yeah, so those are two interests. I used to draw and paint. I actually, in high school, I did a lot of drawing, and I thought I might go into art or design in some way. And I also always wrote and like wrote poetry and stories and things, but I don't know. I just felt like maybe I had even a sense that writing was something that I could kind of grow and take it further than art and design. I don't know why you make these choices. I mean, I'm really happy with the choice I made. And then I've kind of let it go. But sometimes I'll sketch, even paint. It's really relaxing, but it's something that I don't want to try to be good at because I spend so much time really working hard at writing and trying to always grow and be better. And art, I just want it to be something that's playful. So yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, just something that you don't have to be competitive or try super hard, that you can just enjoy for what it is. Yeah, definitely. Saadia, how about you?
I don't know. I don't do a lot. I work a lot. I'm a workaholic and I'm always working. Yes, I'm more of an introvert, so I don't like spending time with people. And so, my work becomes like my escape. A lot of times I read a lot for fun too. And just, take a lot of naps. I don't know if I should say that, but I love napping, and that's like my number one thing.
Pro nap.
It's so helpful to just get recharged, and I often stay up late reading, and so I sometimes end up taking a nap during the day to kind of that. And pets, I refuse to keep pets because I keep telling people I have 2 kids and that's enough of having to take care of others. But recently my neighborhood like stray cat has adopted us, so apparently we have a cat now, which I have no control over, but I don't know, she's always around, and I guess we get to feed her and pet her, and
Cats are easy.
Sorry.
Cats are easy. That's why I love them. I had a dog, and the dog was too. I had little kids and a dog, and it was. I love dogs, but it was too much. So we're
I like cats. I had cats when we were kids. Then I was not the one taking care of them. So now I just like watch as my kids fawn over this street cat and take care of her.
The cat adopting the family, that's a classic situation, and it always plays out with someone saying never want a pet, and then like you said, they adopt you. So that's amazing. And as for naps, you are not alone there. As Veera and I can both relate from what it sounds like. Definitely staying up too late reading because maybe you're just so close to the end of the book, and then catching up the next day all the time.
Yeah,
so
I don't think I'm a good example for my kids, but can't tell them to go to sleep at a decent time when I'm up all hours.
So as a bookstore, we promote reading as much as we can. So that's all I'll say there.
As authors too, read all you can, people.
Definitely. Well, amazing. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I just wanted to open the floor briefly. Any final thoughts or anything else that you'd like to share?
I don't know. What do you think, Veera? We had such a good discussion.
I know.
What are you working on next?
Oh yeah, well we can talk about that. We can talk about that a little bit. So I'm working on a sequel to The Night Diary, and it's going. So I'm kind of going back to my novel before this, about a family that had to leave their homes during the partition of India, which is connected to my father's family's history. And I'm following that family and seeing how they're kind of navigating after the crisis, sort of what happens after you survive. Because I think we focus a lot of times, including myself, on like the survivor story and, what happens when you have to pick up the pieces, and how are you strengthened, and how are you forever sort of wounded by these experiences. So that's what I am writing about next. And Saadia,
we've talked about this before, so it seems like we're kind of on the same wavelength. And my next middle grade, I have a lot of things that are in the works, including more Yasmin books. I have a graphic novel coming out next year that I'm kind of done with, just kind of putting the polishing of it. And my next middle grade novel that I just turned in my first draft, my editor is also a partition novel, and it's so those of you who don't know where I'm from and Veera's family's from, in the Indian subcontinent in 1947, we went through a really traumatic experience. Our grandparents or great grandparents did, and that was called partition. And so I'm finally putting a lot of my grandmother's experiences, and my mother-in-law who's as old as that as well. She's elderly, so a lot of her stories in this book. So yeah, it's been very, very heavy work. Just you know, again, I feel like when I wrote Yusuf Azeem, it was where I had the burden of an entire community story, and I thought that was it. That was my one, heavy story. But turns out I liked the experience of it. I liked the feeling that I was doing something where I could share, somebody's story with the rest of the world. So the Partition Project, which is what it is named currently, you never know, these things change, titles change. Yeah, it's about a girl who's hearing her grandmother or interviewing a grandmother and taking these stories down. So like Yusuf Azeem, it's going to be back and forth in time. And I guess we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it ends up.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you both for sharing that. That is a classic question. I can't believe I forgot that one. So thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, when we definitely have those to look forward to as books that we can definitely enjoy and learn a lot from. So keep those. We'll keep those on our mental calendars and look out for those release dates. Hopefully here soon. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Saadia and Veera. We appreciate you just taking the time to spend with us so much. And for our friends back home, How to Find Out What You're Not Looking For and Yusuf Azeem Is Not a Hero are both available in paperback right now when you're watching this video. They came out on the 13th of September, and we have copies in the store. Check the link in the description below because we'll have links to buy them online, and you can get them shipped to you or come pick them up in the store. Either way, we'll have copies for you. So.
And we will sign them, or at least sign little book plates as well. So
yes,
absolutely. We'll get you some signed book plates so that you can have that personalized copy. And now you know a little bit more about the books. Obviously, you got to go pick them up. So thanks again so much for spending this time with us. And we will see you all next time.
thank you. Bye.
thank you.